to create an IPF from the Cayuse front page at ucdavis.cayuse424.com, click on Cayuse SP, and then click on Start New Proposal in the proposal dashboard. On this screen, you will enter all the basic or general information of the proposal, starting with the sponsor. Now, if you search for a sponsor who does not appear, double-check the spelling and search for them again. If they really aren't in our system, then select Miscellaneous Sponsors, and this will allow you to proceed with preparing the internal processing form. Then later, under the Submission Notes tab, provide as much information as you have regarding the actual sponsor so that the Sponsor Programs Office can add them into the Cayuse system. So after finding the sponsor, fill out the other fields as shown here. Funding opportunity number from the funding opportunity announcement, the sponsor program name, their URL. Now, the prime funding agency, you enter something in this field only when we are applying for a subaward, which means that this prime funding agency will be sending funds to the sponsor, who will then carve out a portion of those funds to us. That's the only time you would indicate the prime funding agency. Under admin unit, this is the main administrative unit. The primary administrative contact should be you. This is the person the Sponsor Programs Office will contact if they have any questions regarding this IPF. Short project name. Up top on this general information screen, you can see that there are instructions, and the information entered here will allow anyone to know at a glance important specifics about this proposal. So we recommend you add the submission deadline, the PI's last name, and the sponsor, in this case, the University of Liechtenstein. Enter the start and end dates of the project. Then for activity code, you click on this link, and from the drop-down, you select what type of proposal you are preparing. And you do the same for proposal type, instrument type, and the submission method, how it will be submitted to the sponsor. Affiliated unit, this field isn't used too often, but any unit you add here will be added to the queue to review and authorize this IPF. So a good time to use the affiliated unit is if you're submitting an internal processing form because the PI, say, is changing and the new PI is in a different unit. Here you could add the original PI's unit so that they too could review and approve this change. Now the sponsor deadline, this is when the sponsor wants a submission, and we recommend that you use military time to avoid confusion. And it's usually going to be when it's received, not when it needs to be postmarked by. Then you add the full title of the project. And at the bottom, there are options to pair a proposal with a proposal in Cayuse 424. Do not use this. Do not pair a proposal. Even if you're using Cayuse 424 to submit the proposal to the sponsor, and Cayuse 424 is used to submit proposals to most federal agencies except for NSF and NASA. If you use these features, they create technical difficulties downstream, so avoid it. And once you've completed all this, you click Save, and you will see that you have now completed the first tab in the item list on left, and then there will be all these other tabs that do not yet have green check marks next to them. So you will complete each tab until you have a column of green check marks. The only tab that doesn't require a check mark is Submission Notes. A few things to pay attention to as you work your way through. Under the Investigators Research Team tab, the first name you enter will be the lead PI. And for other PIs, if like co-PIs, it's not an option. You can select principal investigator for them. And if you have someone's effort in percentage, you can click on this link here, person months, and it will lead you to a PDF where you can enter their percentage and their type of appointment, whether they're a faculty appointed with a 9-month appointment or 11 months or a calendar year 12-month appointment. And it will calculate what the person months are for that individual, which you can then enter here in this field. Allocation of credit. Up here, it indicates that it should be 100%. So you can allocate 100% to the lead PI, or you can split it equally, however the PI wants to do it. This is allocation of intellectual credit, and it's something that the schools and colleges use to track involvement. So if this is left blank, the sponsor programs office will distribute this among all the investigators listed. Moving down to the budget tab, because you are strongly recommended by the sponsor programs office to attach a scope of work, a budget, and a budget justification. Here in the IPF, you can just keep this a summary rather than providing us a more detailed budget. And double check that the number of budget periods are correct. And note that the left column is for the first project period, the current period, and then the next column is for all project periods. So there's a section for cost sharing, and even if you have cost sharing, the sponsor programs office does not recommend that you click yes and complete the fields that appear. Cost share is when a university unit or a third party are providing funds that we otherwise would request from the sponsor to support the project. And if cost sharing is involved, it is required that you provide written proof of the cost share commitment that is signed by an individual who is authorized to commit those funds. So the sponsor programs office recommends that you skip this cost share section and instead attach that required documentation under the proposal attachments tab, and then add a note in the submission notes tab at the bottom that the cost share commitment needs to be added to the internal processing form, and SPO staff will handle this. For F&A rates, if you click on this field, it'll open a pop-up that allows you to select the appropriate F&A or indirect cost rate. And even if a lot of the work is being done off campus, the definition of on versus off campus are specified by contracts and grants accounting. And in a lot of cases, what someone considers off campus is actually on campus. So be sure you select the correct rate, and you can search on campus versus off campus, and the contracts and grants webpage will come up with guidance on that. And then you enter the other fields as needed. So moving on down the tabs, the regulatory compliance, here's where you indicate whether there are human subjects involved in the project and whether you have IRB protocol approval. And if so, you can add the approved protocol here, like as shown here for IACUC, the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee protocol, and be sure to indicate whether there are any biohazardous materials. Read these definitions, make sure that everything's properly checked. Moving on down, location of sponsored activities. This is for UC Davis only. So if you have a subaward, you don't need to put the subaward's location of activity. And here you can see we have indicated that the campus location of the dairy teaching and research facility is 50% of the work, and then 50% is also going to be done at an offsite campus or off-campus location in California. So the abstract, you can enter a little text there, or you can put not applicable since you're separately attaching a scope of work, and that would go here. Here's where you add any of the attachments that are applicable to this project for review by the sponsor programs office. If you only attach scope of work, budget justification, and budget, that's fine. And we'll review other documents when we get closer to the deadline. Approving units, you want to make sure that if there's more than one approving unit, there's no gap. You don't jump from 1 to 3 or 2 to 4. You can have multiple ones, multiple twos, but make sure there's no gap and make sure all the units should be involved. This is populated by the admin unit you selected at the top and then the units of any personnel who have been added. Finally, submission notes does not need a green check mark. I'll go back to approving units here and just authorize this so I get a green check mark here. Submission notes, like I said, doesn't need a green check mark, but any information you add here can be helpful to speed the review process, to answer questions that someone may have. So the more info, the better. And when you're ready, just click submit for routing. Hopefully this was helpful.